Hey, it's Chris at Garage Times. I'm just doing a video on my wiring for my fan setup in my pole barn. I'm not a certified electrician. This is just how I did it as a homeowner, business owner, and just showing you what I did. So here we go. I'm going to show you basically what I was planning on doing, what you could do, and then what I ended up doing. On the fans that I got, I had made some videos, a couple videos back on the fans I installed, mostly just a review after install, but the fan wiring on these fans wasn't what I expected when I got them. I ended up getting like these remote controls that you use with them. So I guess here we go. So what I ended up doing is I had done all my wiring. I had ran 14-2, that white wire coming in, that white Romex. And that's basically like a hot black wire and a white neutral wire and a copper bare wire is what you have in that setup. And that was gonna be my main, wiring feed line power coming in. And then my 3 blue Romex wires, I was gonna run a parallel circuit of wiring to each of the 3 fan controls I wanted to use. So let me just back up and show you what I was gonna purchase here, which I actually did purchase. I got 3 of these normal fan control 15 amp switches, like 3-speed switches. And I was gonna install 3 of those and 1 regular switch for the lights. So basically I was gonna run power here for like my lights, and I was gonna wire all 3 of the lights off this 1 switch, and then I'd have 3 separate controls for the 3 separate fan motors. Well, when I got to looking at everything, they have transponders that they put in these newer fans. So I guess unless you were gonna cut and splice wires, which are not, like, the manufacturer's not okay with doing that, to do what the manufacturer wants you to do, basically you're just gonna use these switches, just normal switches, normal on-off switches, power in the top, power leaving the bottom, and that's it. And then that's gonna be for your light. That'll be for your power actually up there and your motor power availability, so light power and motor power by these switches. But to turn the motors on and like to turn the lights on after you like turn those on, to actually operate the fan, you have to use the remotes. So I don't know if I'm a super big fan of it yet. I'm gonna see how it turns out. They work fine as it is right now, but yeah. So, but as for the wiring, let's get into the wiring here. So what I was gonna do here, actually, we'll talk about what happened here. This is basically, I have incoming line power, and then I have which is the white Romex. The 3 blue Romexes is actually 14-3. And what that is a black hot line wire with a white neutral wire, and then a red, like, they're called runner wires, or there's another name for them, but it's another wire you can use for feeding available power to another component in the setup. Like, for example, you could run your power from the white Romex to a light switch, and then you could run you could use red for power as well and run that to your motor for your fan. Well, in this case, for this setup, the manufacturer doesn't have a need for the red wire. So I basically took all 3 of the blue 14-3 Romexes and I just wire nutted those together, because they're not used down here for any power feed at all, or any circuitry necessary for it. And then at the top, up by the fans, I just put a wire nut on each one individually at each fan motor. So then what I did is, to run this in parallel and not series, there is a difference, but we'll just talk about parallel wiring. The parallel wiring, what I did is I took my hot wire off this white Romex, which is black, the black wire, and I ran it to a pigtail here, like that. And I basically then took that hot wire to that red one there, the black wire to this red, well, they're all 3 are red, but, and then I basically ran 3 separate black shorter length wires to each one of the top of my switches. So hot coming into that first black wired wire nut, and then I run 3 wires off, basically one to the top of that switch, one to the top of that switch, and then one to the top of that switch, all off that same wire nut. So that's my power feed in, basically parallel wiring for the switches. And then what I did is I took the black wires on each one of those blue wires. Each one of those blue Romex wires have a black wire in each one of them, and I took all of those, and obviously I separated them to each one of the switches. I took the furthest one here and I ran it to this bottom of this switch, and the next blue wire Romex, I took the black wire and ran it to the bottom of that switch, and the same thing with this one, bottom of that switch from that third bundle of Romex. So pretty simple. You have your hots coming in and then your hots going on. I like to do the hot in the top of the switches and then the hot leaving the bottom, but I think, you know, you really could have it however you want, but that's how I do it. And basically I tied all the grounds, which are the bare copper wires. I took all the grounds from the 3 blue 14-3 Romex and the 1 white Romex. I took all the bare coppers and then I bundled them together there. I took them, some line pliers, and I just twisted them all together, and then I actually didn't have a big enough wire nut for that. It's a pretty big bundle of wires. And then I ran jumpers basically I ran 3 jumpers off that. So all 4 Romexes are tied together, and then there's 3 separate jumper wires that are all bundled in there too, and all 3 of those bare wires go to each one of my switches, each one. So that pretty much is the wiring in its entirety. It's very, very simple for this setup. I mean, this is what the manufacturer wants. This is what they recommend. I mean, because this is what they give you basically. But what I was gonna do is I was gonna run that, you know, that line wire in, the white Romex. It's called line, or I guess your power, your hot wires. Basically run that in, and then I was gonna still run parallel wiring off of that to 1 light switch, and I was gonna power all 3 of my fan light circuits, and then I would have like the 3 separate actual dial controls for the motors, but that's not how we did it. So I'm gonna use these remotes and see how it works out. So hopefully the kicker is hopefully the transponder up in each one of the fans that you use, it's like got snapped together plugs that you plug in up there at the top of the fan. Hopefully the transponder lasts, because really that'd be the only thing. If the transponder goes, you know, depending on how long these fan manufacturers are in business, you know, you might be replacing a fan. That's the only thing I don't like about it, as opposed to, you know, just hard wiring it off a switch arrangement down here where you have one switch for all your lights, or, you know, however you want to set it up and how many ever switches you want. But that's what I wanted. When I come into the shop, I was just like, 1 switch, all 3 fan lights come on. And then if I want the 3 fan control motors, I got three different separate parallel wiring setups for that. And when I'm saying parallel and series, you want to make sure that you don't, especially for the fan motors, you don't want to run your wiring like power into the first fan motor and then power out of that motor to the next motor, and then again out of that motor to the third motor. In my case, I have 3 fans. You would never want to do that where you're running power through each one of the loads, because you could damage your motors up there by doing that. It's not like a wall plug. So this is different. Like on wall plugs, 20 amp circuit wall plugs, number 12 wire, you're gonna run like, you know, your power into the first plug, and then you'll run basically power out of that plug to your next plug. So that's not how you would do it in this case. So if you're looking to do this, look up parallel wiring. Basically you're feeding power to each individual switch or each individual motor from the main power source, but not going through a switch to another switch to another switch, or through a plug, or, you know, definitely not through a motor. So All right, guys, this is just how I did it. I'm sure there'll be some super awesome electricians on here. Let me know if I did anything wrong. So you guys have a good one. Take it easy. Bye.